So for the October 2019 Great Film Throwback Day, you know, I'm all about the Halloween. And I always like to rope in Halloween themes and movies and other kinds of popular culture into my channel for the sake of bringing in the spooktacular festivities. And there is no one that knows how to do that any better than the likes of Alfred Hitchcock, also known as the Master of Suspense. And one of the few things that made me so happy about starting this monthly segment on my channel a few years back was that I finally got a chance to watch a lot of Alfred Hitchcock's films, because I always appreciated him. I always thought that he was one of the greatest directors of all time, but besides one specific film that I had watched many years ago, I never had the opportunity to watch any more. And today we're going to be taking a look at his 1958 classic Vertigo, starring Jimmy Stewart and Kim Novak. So, I have known about this movie for many, many years. I always knew that this film existed and that Jimmy Stewart, who is one of the greatest actors of all time, was in it as the starring character, John Ferguson, who is a police officer who left the force because of an event in his past that had him developing a very serious and recurring fear of heights, also known as acrophobia. Now, that was what I knew about in regards to this movie. I always knew about the fact that it was about the fear of heights, acrophobia. I've known about this movie ever since I was 8 years old, I think, but I never saw it. And now that I've finally seen this film, it took me a little while to get my thoughts together, because this movie is definitely not what I expected it to be. It is not about a man overcoming his fear of heights. Rather, it is something a little bit more different and definitely very twisted. But then again, it's an Alfred Hitchcock film. What do you expect? So, while John Ferguson is recovering from his issues and trying to conquer his fear of heights, he is told by one of his friends that he needs to keep a watch on his wife, because his wife is acting very strangely, and one of the few things that his friend is thinking is that his wife Meredith may in fact be possessed, or that someone is following her. And through John's time tracking her, seeing what's going on, he definitely starts to see something interesting unfolding. And through this constant tailing of this woman, Meredith, he develops a yearning, a desire for her, up until the point when tragedy strikes, all because of the fact that he cannot save her because of his fear of heights. But there is so much more to that story after that event takes place, and that is where everything just starts to just blow up in your face and say, wow, so this movie wasn't about John's overcoming fear of heights. Rather, it was someone using him because he had a fear of heights to do something even more disturbing. And I have to say that I didn't think that it was the best movie that I've ever seen, but I will say that it was so interesting to me, especially after he starts following Meredith, because at the beginning we see the whole plot laid in front of us, and that's when things start to go a little off the beaten path and start to get very interesting. There's ideas of the paranormal, there's the idea of thrillers, white knuckles if you will, and it just all culminates into this one moment, and then the story just goes in that crazy direction that I personally didn't see coming. I also will say that this may be one of Jimmy Stewart's greatest performances. I have seen Jimmy Stewart in some of his greatest work, like It's a Wonderful Life and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, but quite frankly, I never really thought that they were the best movies that I've ever seen. I appreciate the fact that they're here, I appreciate their place in popular culture, but they just weren't the greatest films that I've ever seen. And while Vertigo is pretty much in that same vein, I do think that his performance is fantastic. He's powerful. He really scares you sometimes, especially with what happens after the climax of the film. It is just unbelievable to think that that is the direction that this story goes in. And I don't want to give any more away, because you just have to see this movie to believe it. And because of the fact that it takes a little time, and the fact that the character development starts building up and things and other layers start getting peeled away, The build-up to it is interesting, but it's not the greatest. It sometimes can be a bit lacking, it could lag a little bit, and it will cause you to sort of drift off. But there is also a fantastic score from Bernard Herrmann that really drives this movie. The music is spooky and eerie, and it definitely keeps you alert to make sure that you're not officially pulling yourself away from the story. Rather, you are very interested to see what exactly happens with John and Meredith. And it is just crazy how this film ends, because there really is no true, definite ending. There is a crazy event that takes place at the very end, and then the movie just stops with the ringing of a church bell, and that's basically where you're just throwing your popcorn at the screen saying, Alfred Hitchcock, what did you do? You got me up to this point, and now you're just gonna stop the story? What happens next? And that's, I guess, why the cult following of a film like Vertigo, not necessarily just a cult following, but just the overall barriers and topics that were taken on in this 1958 film, because these were some things that we never even saw in film at the time, and this was still the golden age of film. So the fact that Alfred Hitchcock once again does so many different things to break the norms and cause a little bit of controversy, if you will, for the time, just makes him the icon that he is, and that's what makes Vertigo such an iconic film in all of history. Is it a movie that I would want to see again? Yeah, it's definitely a movie that I would want to give a second watch, just in case there was something that I missed, because there's a lot of pieces to this intricate puzzle, especially while it's building up to that climax. And is it a movie that I'd want to get on DVD? Not necessarily. I mean, it's definitely a good watch, but when it comes to Alfred Hitchcock movies that I have seen, I own Psycho, and I really think that that is the greatest film that he's ever given us. But I will definitely say that Vertigo, if you are an Alfred Hitchcock fan, or you just like horror or thriller, this will definitely be one that you will enjoy. And I'm going to give Vertigo a 2.5 stars out of 4, merely because of the fact that I just fall somewhere in the middle. There are good parts to this movie, but there are some not so good parts either, which is why I think 2.5 stars is the best rating that I can give it at this point. But thank you very much for watching, everybody. Leave your comments in the box below, and let's discuss Vertigo, and I will see you in the next one. Hey, thank you so much for stopping by my channel today. If you're new here and want to see more of what my channel has to offer, please click on the link to my last video, or hit that subscribe button to be kept up to date with all of my uploads. Content of all sorts is posted here quite often, so trust me, you do not want to fall behind. I will see you in the comments, and actions speak louder than words.